I'm just so delighted, Nikki, to have you join me here at the Grieving Place. You are someone that I've come to love. What brought us together was your interest in understanding this tortuous, journey that you've been on after the sudden, unexpected death of your beautiful son, Braden. And you joined me and others for an experience through the Grief Companion program that I've been leading. And so I got to know you in the most intimate, most beautiful of ways. And for that, I'm forever grateful. As I was saying to you before we started the conversation, I feel like you have gifted me Braden's presence. And I feel like I've come to know and love him and am so, you know, grateful for your ongoing continuing bond with him because it gives all of us an opportunity to stand shoulder to shoulder with you as a bereaved mom and support you as you advocate and through him to ensure that what happened to Braden doesn't happen to any other family or child. So, welcome to the Grieving Place. It's really meaningful to have you here as we explore your story of love and loss. And so maybe let's just begin with, what drew you to this work?
Yeah. So what drew me to this work is my son Braden. So I have a candle here that I light every whenever I speak of Braden and about Braden, I light my candle and it brings his essence into the conversation. So it's something about the light is beautiful, and it's my ritual that I have, which is very grounding and centering. So I just want to acknowledge that he is with us and here in this space. And my my story is what brought me to this work. My so I am a healthcare professional. I'm an RN that works in the healthcare system. And my son Braden, he passed away November 19th of 2024, and his passing away was unexpected, and it upon reflection of what occurred, there were multiple compound systemic failures that occurred, and his life was taken. And the and I to this day I still believe that his death was preventable, and of course by no direct uh, cause from an individual or a mistake that some one person made, but just a system that failed on many levels. And so my work and my journey after Braden's death has also brought me here. So my experience of being a part of a system in my grief, that's a whole story as well in there, right? And so uh, that is really what has brought me here to today.
Yeah.
And yeah.
It's so powerful, isn't it, when you think of it that you were in service of others as part of the
Mm-hmm.
healthcare community as a nurse.
Mm-hmm.
And that way of being, wanting to help alleviate suffering from people is just
Mm-hmm.
part of who you are. It takes
Yeah.
on a whole other scale, though, after what you and your husband have endured and the community that supports you,
Mm-hmm.
of which I feel like I'm privileged now to be part of that community, to
Mm-hmm.
uh, to experience that kind of heart-wrenching loss.
Mm-hmm.
It changes someone. I often say there's a before and
Yeah.
an after. I'm wondering if you want to speak a little bit about that.
Yeah. So Braden was 11 years old when he passed away. And so just to give a bit of history, so Braden was born with a type of cerebral palsy. So he was very high functioning, vibrant, creative, playful, engaging young boy that loved life. So many dreams and possibilities that he was so eager to participate in, and so he was very vibrant in life. And but he had a stroke in utero, so before birth, which affected one side of his body. So he used a hand brace and a foot brace to help aid his gait, his walk, and he needed physiotherapy. And so he had some history with the healthcare system. So here I was, a nurse, devoting my career, my profession to caring for people. And then lo and behold, Braden is born, and I am now a mother in the healthcare system and having to navigate the specialists, the appointments, the he had some brain surgery because he was having seizures. So we navigated a number of complex medical needs through his lifetime. And as a result, he lived a high quality life. When you look at him, you would not know that he had cerebral palsy, and he was very intelligent and, like I said, engaging. And life was so precious and full of joy. There's just how children complete that part of life. Like they just add this vibrancy and this deeper meaning and experience of life. And so our whole, who we were as people and our decisions that we made were based on our unity with Braden and as a family and his future. And, so we were very focused in our trajectory, and we were fully aware of the joy and the beauty that having Braden in our lives brought us. So, we were just on this, it was like a high. So, and then we lived in the Lower Mainland. So we live in British Columbia, and we lived in Vancouver, part of Vancouver, in the Lower Mainland. And my father became quite ill. He was diagnosed with ALS, and so we decided to move to Vancouver Island. And so we moved to a different health authority from where Braden was originally taken care of. And anyways, we were here for a couple years, and Braden started developing his symptoms and was taken into the ER, and one thing led to another, and Braden ended up passing away quite quickly. And it was so unexpected. The shock, the trauma, the pure confusion. Like one minute he's with us, telling us he's not feeling well. The next minute he's gone. Like it literally happened over 15 hours. He was gone. And our whole lives were completely shattered. Right? So now here I am, being a healthcare professional, being a family member while working as a healthcare professional at the same time. And then the system that I gave my whole life to in so many ways has now literally failed us in many ways, and he's now gone. And then what ended up happening was the aftermath in that was that the system was not prepared to hold us as his parents, hold us in our grief, on so many different levels. And quite frankly, the grief avoidant. I never expected anything like that from the healthcare system, but having lived the experience of what we went through, and then literally I describe it as a healthcare hit and run, where the harm occurred, and we were left lifeless for probably 3 months without contact from the system or the people. And there was the odd person. I shouldn't say everyone, because there were a couple of people who reached out, but the people who needed to be reaching out were not reaching out. And then when they did reach out, we were faced. They didn't reach out. We actually reached out to them, and then we were faced with this wall of silence. So hit and run, picking ourselves up, then trying to understand some things in the system, and then nobody communicating. And so that compounded our grief for sure. And I would say it contributed to the trauma that we were experiencing in our grief. And it feels very dehumanizing, is how I would describe it. And, when you're in the deep grief that we were experiencing, especially at the first 6 months, a year, um, we just needed other human beings to be there, and in a way where there was transparency, accountability, and care, compassion. Um, Somebody who was willing to be with us in our grief and yet hold their own part in what occurred. Like, we just needed to be human with each other, and it did not happen. Um,
The impact of that, it ripples out. And as you and I talked about, these systems that we are inside of, we don't often see the policies, the procedures, the culture, the
yeah.
values, the hierarchies. We experience them, but we don't see them. And then when we go through something like you've navigated, everything that was invisible now becomes visible. And when
Mm.
you move to hold the system accountable, the dominant response often is to deny, to
Yeah.
delay. It's not to disrupt, it's not to stay open and curious and invite people in. So, a lot of the work that you've been doing in honor of Braden and yourself, right? How could you
Mhm.
not do this? Is about holding the system accountable to some of the failures, some of the points. And the
Mhm.
other thing I would offer is, too often in our litigious society, rather than apologize and acknowledge and then look to improve, there is often this move to pause and distance and give ourselves time and space to come up with the legal response, which may not be the humanist response and often isn't, which further causes harm.
Mhm.
And so much of our
Mhm.
complications in grief is a result of not being witnessed, not being held, not being
Yeah.
seen, right? And
Yeah.
in part,
Yeah.
Nikki, this is what you are teaching all of us. It's to
Mhm.
not deny what has happened, but in fact, the way that I've witnessed you grow through this experience is to see how you can become an agent of change and hope so that this doesn't happen again, right? You're out here
Mhm.
with your hands open, giving
Mhm.
people a chance to respond with compassion and skill. And yet, from what you've shared with me, you've been met with silence or explanations or justifications. Maybe say a little bit
Mhm.
more about that.
Yeah, so, the healthcare system in many ways is designed to protect itself. So there's legislation in place that every leader, every healthcare practitioner in the system has to stand behind that legislation. Otherwise, they are held legally, like, responsible for what can occur next. And it's very punitive, right? Like, it's the way the system is designed. Um, in BC, anyways. I can't speak for all systems, but um, and so the transparency and the truth telling, uh, it, it does not occur because of the way the systems are set up, the legislation, right? And the system does it protects itself, but it also is fearful of, I would say, being being the owner of a learning system,
Hmm.
because in a learning system there are mistakes that occur. And the I say in the work that I do, I say that we are all human, and mistakes are bound to happen because we are human. That's part of our system as a human being. um, but to not learn from those mistakes, that's where it becomes really hard to forgive, like, from a family member. So I I mean, I'm a healthcare professional. I have made mistakes before, you know, and it's what I do with them, how I tell truth, how I take ownership, how I lay it out to the patient or the family it might impact, and then reconcile. So, what have I learned from this? What am I doing different? How can I reflect? Right. And so, as a system, I think this is so important. And I just want to really emphasize that this is not about blaming professionals, right? It's not about um, saying that people did not do their job or they were not following their standards of practice or anything like that. So this is really about the context, the container in which the system is in, and the conditions that enable us to be able to show up in a way where we can actually exercise truth telling, transparency, um, being human, making like the mistakes for learning and growth and evolution, and then how we can prevent that from happening. And but again, when a system doesn't show up in that kind of framework, it re-traumatizes the people that it is meant to be actually like protecting in some way. You know, we trusted the system to do no harm. And I also trusted the system because, on a personal level, if I make a mistake or I notice there was a gap in something that I did, I want to do better for next time. And that's all we wanted as part of our journey and our healing or processing of our grief. It's such a crucial part. And when that doesn't happen, again, it just compounds the grief. It re-traumatizes. It ignites these feelings inside of an individual where you actually become, angry or resentful. Blame can happen easier, right? And I'm in a very unique position that I am a healthcare provider myself. So I have this perspective as a healthcare provider, and I also have the lived experience. So I think, given what we've experienced because of my history as a professional, I'm able to somehow separate it in some ways, but I don't think that can happen for everyone. Um, and I cannot imagine what families or patients go through who have been harmed by a system that is not, again, transparent, truthful, accountable, and then improving from that lived or learned experience. Like,
As I listen
yeah,
to everything and the way that you're speaking about this, it doesn't only make sense, it's touching my heart. So I'm a little gobsmacked, to be honest, that you're not getting more people turning towards you, not away, to say, let's bring Nikki and her experience in honor of Braden, because let's
mm-hmm.
agree that nobody wants an 11-year-old boy to die. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Especially if there are ways or things that we could do or could have done better. And
Yeah,
when the invitation is for us to have that conversation, it's I'm curious because in a parallel system, let's call it aviation, they
yeah,
moved beyond risk management towards something
mm-hmm.
called safety management systems, which
Mm-hmm.
centers the experience around giving all of us voice and choice as the passengers, the pilots, the flight attendants, to ensure that
Mm-hmm.
if they see something wrong, that we're all empowered to speak up, right? So that people have an optimal flying experience. And when I think of the health and well-being of people inside a healthcare system, I think of an optimal healthcare experience, not just about preventing disease or preventing death, but really ensuring that people inside the system, both those that are providing care and those receiving, are having, the best possible experience. So when you lay that out as the objective, then of course, if things can be improved, it doesn't
Yeah,
become something we cover up. We are going to invite transparency, right? So
mm-hmm.
Nikki, you said, you have this unique experience as a mom, as
Mm-hmm.
someone who works as a professional who works in healthcare,
Mm-hmm.
and now as a bereaved mom, and also someone who's a grief companion, right? Who's a coach, a
Yes.
professional coach as well. You have, and a yogi, a yoga teacher. I mean, you have these multiple perspectives that you are drawing from to help you navigate this experience in a way that aligns with your values, that is
Mhm.
always kind of centering this on behalf and alongside Braden, so
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
no one under your watch has to suffer needlessly. And this is part of what you are speaking to. It's not the suffering that creates the complications in grief. It's actually the unnecessary suffering, often at the hands of, inadequate systems and outdated policies and structures, or people's fear. That is what
Yeah.
causes the pain. So I'm wondering, with all of that shared, what is something that you've learned, the grief has taught you, that really nothing else could?
Um, there are a number of things that grief has taught me, and one of them being that I would say that impermanence. It's not a concept. It's a lived, embodied fracture. Like it's a part of, and so um, I think that for myself, it's just being with that in a way where that the change that I desire is it's based on the this concept of impermanence. Nothing is forever. We're constantly evolving. We're constantly adapting, and we're constantly learning. And I think for me that softens, like it softens it for me, and it allows me to be in a place of compassion uh, versus anger. Because believe me, when this first happened, the rage, oh my goodness, right? The rage was just, and even now, I've spoken to you about this before. There's this, like I feel like a victim of life in some ways that I'm working through. But I would say this that the concept of impermanence has allowed me to soften, to be compassionate, to see that although I'm in my pain, the people within the system are people, and they've experienced their moral distress in this. They've also had some pain. They have to go home to their 11-year-old son, realizing that decisions were made that night based on what they could do, and it wasn't good enough. And what do they hold, right? Like, so um, there is this, yeah, it's taught me a lot about compassion and empathy and being with the anger. It's the impermanence of life has it's just allowed me to be with all of it in such a way that it does allow me to move forward. I have to say, and to be able to have an impact in a way that brings meaning to such a meaningless thing in life. Like I mean, I will never understand why these things happen, and that's a whole other conversation, right? But this holding on to the underbelly of impermanence and change and adapting and learning and growing, and we continually evolve. And I believe Braden is continually evolving where he is. And he's a part of that evolution of our soul cycle. There's part of me that believes that Braden is still very much with me. I mean, the love I feel for him is very palpable. And I know he knows and he can feel that. I feel him, right? So yeah, it's really just broadened my whole scope around that. And the idea that love does not end when the heartbeat ends, right? They, our love is, I believe that love is so powerful that it does travel dimensions. And so I have a very strong knowing within myself that this is such a blip of what our soul evolution is about. So we are here to experience life to the fullest that we can experience it. And I don't understand why bad things happen to good people.
Yeah.
And yet here we are still here in this life. And our work is not done yet. And so, and I have a choice in that. My husband has a choice in that. What do we do with the remainder of our life, knowing that Braden's no longer in it in a physical way,
Yeah.
right? So we talk about continuing bonds, right? And the continuing bonds around my relationship with Braden in a different form.
Mm.
So this has taught me that yeah, these bonds are strong and real and still there, just different. And I'm coming into relationship with that. I wouldn't say I'm fully there yet. You know, if someone says to me, "How can you befriend grief?" I'm like, "I'm not there. I'm not there yet, but I can sure tell you that the bonds are there
Uh-huh.
with my son." And so it has definitely taught me a little bit about that. And I would also add that, you know, I I didn't know the meaning of strength until I've been through this, and so the the world can break me, which feels like it breaks you. I know I'm not broken, but when it first happens, it feels like that is what is like you're shattered. Your whole world is shattered. Your whole heart, and yet I'm fully capable of still functioning in this world, and I'm still capable of saying yes with the knowing that it will lead to the imprint or the impact I want to have in the world. Uh, and truthfully, nothing compares to what I've been through. And so
Yeah.
bring it on. Like, honestly, like, this is how like, I had a conversation with myself the other day, and I'm like, what I want to be doing in this lifetime is to say yes. Say yes. Because honestly, I feel like I've experienced the worst already, and nothing will ever compare to that. And so it's the worst that can happen if I say yes, right? So there's this lightness in my journey that has also started to occur, which I never, 6 months ago or a year ago, I would have never thought that that was even possible. So yeah, yeah, and there's no point in finding the meaning in it in a logical analytical way because I will never understand, but my job is to forge a new trailblazing a new way in life with and I want to be real with that and I want to share that, and I believe that every single human being will experience grief in their lifetime, like we all do. It's the one thing we all experience. It's guaranteed. And so here we are, like I want to be able to forge the realness of that and bring that into, leadership conversations and the conversations with youth, with Braden's classmates, with, because this is real. This is, and it's not meant to be put under the carpet or ignored or dismissed. It's, it's a part of being human, and we're all going to experience it. And we're all going to have to support someone in life who is experiencing some form of grief. It might be a divorce, it might be loss of identity, loss of a house, maybe, or in my case, it's my child. But there's these different types of grief that we experience. So, how can we be with each other in that? And at the heart of what I want to be able um, to fan in our human beingness is how can we be with each other in grief? On a one-to-one basis, on a system base, in a team. Like yeah, it shows up everywhere. And yet we don't have these discussions about it. And people avoid it, or they're fearful of it, or they're protective of what might occur as a result of. Yeah.
It's
So,
so refreshing. I mean, this is this is the work, people,
mhm,
right? I had the privilege of getting to know you, Nikki. I think Braden had died, 7, 8 months earlier. And I kept
yeah,
thinking, from which from which foundation does this beautiful human draw from to be able to lean into this pain in a particular kind of way, to have these authentic, soul inspiring, conversations about real life happening in real time. It's not theoretical. So
no,
much like you, there was something inside of me that was burning so deep that that was looking at the system around me and thinking, I don't want to pick up what you're offering,
Yeah.
intuitively knowing that it was dehumanizing and not really
Mhm.
supporting community because we were lacking the compassion, right?
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
irony, of course, is when you do this grief work, you start to become more human. You start to show up more of yourself. You start to live
Mhm.
life and say yes because you've been through the darkest part of your life and recognizing, well, where am I going to where am I going to go now? And
Yeah.
not in spite of what happened, but because of it. That's the invitation. So you
Yeah.
spoke to continuing bonds, and people here may not know about this beautiful theory that just invites us, nay, that compels us to ensure that the relationship that we had with this person, which has changed
Mhm.
form, doesn't have to die alongside them. That's the
Yeah.
reclamation that you're speaking to, which
Mhm.
breathes hope and gives us agency. When everything else is falling apart, we can lean
Yeah.
into reclaiming that relationship in a way that feels right and true for me. Sadly, these structures that you were speaking to, well, first of all, they don't encourage it. They tend to pathologize it. So,
Mhm.
Nikki, so much of what you've shared, which is really about beginning with the end in mind. When we
Yeah.
wake up to the fact that we are going to die, people that we love are going to die. So we get busy asking ourselves, how do I want to live? So
Yeah.
maybe with that in
So true.
mind, maybe share in what ways are you, continuing your bond with beautiful Braden? In what ways are
Mhm.
you ensuring that you and your work is being nourished, that your heart is being nourished? Maybe
Mhm.
speak a little bit more about some of the discoveries that you've made by doing the work that you'd like to gift to the people who are listening, because it really is a gift to listen to you.
Yeah. Thank you. So what I do want to say is that yeah, how do I live? So one of the realizations is that I can be both ruined. I'm going to use that word lightly, like because I'm a little fragile, and I can be radiant at the same time, right? So if I wait to be um, whole again, or like I just would not live. So there is this mindset shift at some point that took place where it's like I can be ruined and radiant all at the same time. And so and I really needed to um, amplify or fan how my radiance, like I needed to be really intentional about that. So how am I radiant in this life, in my own uniqueness, my own light, and what I choose to give out to others in the world. And my niece, when Braden first passed away, my niece said to me, Auntie Nikki, I don't want you to lose your compassion. I don't want you to become hardened um, by Braden's passing. And that really stuck with me. So I had a choice. I had a choice in that moment. I can either close down, or I could try to fan my radiance, my light in this world. And so I chose the ruining. I was felt ruined. It was there. The brokenness, that all that part of it was very loud. um, and it took effort through community, through speaking truth with people I trust, through therapy counselors, through bereavement groups, as well as I took up writing. Like writing was a real therapeutic form for me. Rock painting, um, and my rituals, like lighting a candle when I speak about Braden. Right? It just tugs on those bonds that are sometimes a little loosey, and then it's like instant. It's like just tightens that bond, and I'm like, oh, there he is. Right? So I have these rituals that really support me. Being in nature, my goodness, it was my lifesaver. My dog, You know, Charlie, our dog, which was Braden's brother,
Is that what you call
was
them?
yeah, it was Braden's brother. But just getting him out in nature. So all these things on a personal level, I started meditating. I became part of a meditation group where I listened to other people, uh, which was hard at first, but eventually it became actually a very supportive holding of what I was going through. And of course, as you alluded to, I am a yoga instructor, and so I knew that moving my body was what I needed to do to calm my central nervous system and to sort of ground myself in this experience in a way where I was connected to something greater than myself and my suffering in the moment. So earth, nature, ethers, universe, whatever that is for you or for individuals, is so important. Um, and then, of course, there's the advocacy work that I've stepped into.
Hmm.
Right. Well, that's been a very um, powerful trajectory of my energy for me. It has allowed me to speak truth, to bring Braden's story into places and spaces that matter, um, and also to obviously shift behaviors, cultures, and hopefully legislation and policies that restrict our system when we so desperately need something different, really, for sustainability and quality improvement in our system and continuing to lessen harm that unintentionally occurs, but it's there, right? And so, um, yeah, there's a number of projects I'm working on with regards to the advocacy work. Yeah. And I've also had to advocate for my self needs. I've had to reach out to for example, the hospital where Braden passed away. I approached them and said, I really want a memorial site for Braden. It's important. Um, and we need to be reminded why we show up every day and why we say yes to this work. And patients and families need to know they're not alone as they sit in front of the tree that's being planted in his honor and the plaque with the dragonfly on it. It's a beautiful. So they're in the process of doing some of these things. Um, but I do have to advocate for them.
Yeah.
We did some fundraising for Braden's school to add a playground and a memorial bench. So we did some fundraising. So that's in the making, just to bring Braden's his essence into the lives of any child that sits on that bench at the school. It's like a buddy bench and a memorial bench all in one. So it's just these things that I'm doing. Uh, Created a not-for-profit called Not Just One Voice, where it is about amplifying the lived experiences of patients, families, and healthcare professionals in the healthcare system. So it is designed to collect the stories, and through AI, we're going to be generating themes and topics that show up within those stories as a means to say, this is what's showing up in the lived experiences. Here's what's showing up in the data that's collected within the system. What are the gaps? Where do we need to be doing better? Because lived experiences definitely contribute to the recommendations that are sustainable moving forward. Without the lived experience lens, it's like we've only got part of the solution. Like we need lived experiences to fully shift a culture, to shift our behaviors, and without that, it's not going to work. So it was a not-for-profit platform that a group of us are trying to put out into the world in hopefully nationally across Canada. We're starting in BC right now, but yeah, you know. Um, Also, too, some work around the transportation in BC right now. So I have proposed a law called, we're calling it Braden's Law, but it is about giving healthcare professionals a alternative route. So when the primary transportation system is not accessible or they're under resourced, they're not available, then they can access an alternative tier of transportation. So whether that's search and rescue, whether it's military or not-for-profit organizations that can step in, they can actually have the authority to do that in a way that allows them to make that happen, so that nobody passes away because of a breakdown in transportation, right? Because that was one of the big things that occurred with Braden that night. There was no transportation for him, and he needed a life-saving procedure that they could only do at BC Children's, and they could not get him there. So so there's some of the like the advocacy work helps with my um, bringing Braden to my life and meaning to what occurred. And so, yeah, there's a number of things that I'm involved in, and yeah.
Yeah, so beautiful. Just listening to you, and it's interesting. People might think, wow, the word beautiful to describe all of the things, the experiences, the projects that you're doing to not just honor Braden, maybe that's the fuel for your compass of where you're taking your life next. Nikki, in a real way, you and I have talked about this before, and I use this line deliberately. Through pain, we can fuel our purpose. And
Mm-hmm.
that's really what you are reflecting today and speaking into. And it's not by denying your pain, which in many ways can be so much easier to numb or inoculate or distance ourselves from that which
Mm-hmm.
caused us so much pain. Really, you're serving as one example, one story of what it's like when we do the work, when we face our mortality, when we don't deny, when we ask for community, when we, plant our seeds and find our roots and spread our wings. And so the word, the inspiration that you are bequeathing all of us who listen to you, because it's impossible not to be touched, not just by your words, but your beautiful way of being. Um, it feels like it's sourcing love. Anytime I hear you speak about Braden, I feel connected to him. I feel connected to your ongoing hope, and I feel connected to a community of people who are galvanized to do something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is really
Yeah.
what this is about underneath all of it, is to not look away, is to serve and be
No.
witness to each other's pain. So I can't fully find the words, Nikki, to express what you've come to mean to me, and just so grateful that our paths have crossed and that we've found ways to connect and deepen our
Mm-hmm.
relationship, because I think this is what the world needs. It's for people who will unite together as brothers and sisters, binded by our stories of love and loss.
Mm-hmm.
So is there anything else that you'd like to share before we say goodbye?
Yeah, just like a few things around. So what has really supported me in this is reminding myself that grief is not. So it's a relationship. It's not a problem to be solved, right? So we want to pathologize and and really it's about becoming in relationship with, because grief, it's there. It's a part of who I am now. It will always be there. And it's so how do I become in relationship with it? And trying to stop to fix it, like fixing the grief. It's not to be fixed. Like my what has supported me in so much of this is listening, really listening to the grief, listening to understand what it is trying to tell me, teach me. Um, yeah, and allowing it to change me, because there's this whole like past identity. that I hang on to. And the truth of it is grief is reshaping me, and forcing it to disappear actually creates more suffering. And so being with that and being able to let it shape me. So for me, it's about that place of um, accepting the grief that is there, not agreeing with what had occurred with Braden's death, but the really just allowing this acceptance, rather than trying to force it to disappear, because it is yearning to bring something out in me that is so different than and I'm still in that process, right? But it's bringing out something in me that is very different than I thought
Uh-huh.
who I'd be today. So, it's there to teach, not to hurt me, and yet it is very painful, and especially initially, right? And so, um, yeah, coexist with it, and there's no need to replace it. It's part of who I am. And like any other relationship, there are some days where you need some alone time, right?
Not today.
So I have a sidekick of grief with me.
Hmm.
It's going to be there for the remainder of my life, and the relationship I choose to have with it. That's my freedom of choice in it. And so, I think, yeah, that's what I would want to. The work for me is to learn how to coexist with the grief in a
Yeah.
way where I can still lean into my values, be the person, that I desire to be in the world, and knowing that Braden is right with me there too. And if he's watching me, like, who do I want to be? What would I say to him, right? If he was suffering with the loss of something in his life. So, yeah, it's just learning to coexist with grief, and not just survive, but really thrive in this world. That's my hope. I am very hopeful that one day I will be there. I'm still very young. It's only been a year and a half for me. I'm very young in this relationship development with my grief, but I I'm very hopeful because I have people like you in my world who actually you role model so much, and there's other bereaved parents and mothers and fathers that also are 10 years into their grief journey, and it just gives me hope. And so I cannot emphasize the community. And even if you're there just to listen, like, you don't need to say a whole lot if that's not what you're comfortable with, but to listen, and through osmosis or whatever you are meant to receive, that is what is deemed most important at that time for you. So don't try to force it, but say yes. Say yes to opportunities, even if they're a little uncomfortable right now,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So that's what I would leave with.
Wow. So much. I'm looking forward to a part two and part 22 as I
Yeah.
continue to do my one thing, right, which is to bring language and hope to people when they
Mm-hmm.
are wondering what is wrong with them. And often finding the language, it's like nothing's wrong with you. You're grieving. You're grieving this loss, which
Yeah.
is a reflection of your love. So, from
Mm-hmm.
ruined, as you said, to making space for resilience and radiance, I have felt all of that here today as you continue to grapple with and reconcile this giant loss. And right alongside there is this invitation to coexist with it in a way that makes you feel closer, right?
Yeah.
To purpose, to spirit, to Braden. So,
Yeah.
Nikki, I'm in awe. I've said that before. I don't use that word lightly, but really in awe of all that you have represented, continue to represent as you find your way through all of this. And just so, so
Mm-hmm.
grateful that you've shared a little snapshot of your story of love and loss with all of us here today.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the invite. Thank you for saying yes. And I look forward. I look forward to more.
Yeah,
So
me too.
yeah.
Okay, be well.
Yes. Thank you.